So, what if everything you think is real is just a shadow of the truth? It's a massive question, right? Well, over 2,000 years ago, the Greek philosopher Plato gave us this incredible story to help us wrap our heads around it. Okay, let's dive into his famous allegory of the cave and see what it tells us about the very nature of reality.
All right, so to kick things off, we've got to understand the world where this whole story begins. It's a strange, dark place, and the people who live there have a very, very limited view of the world. In fact, it's the only world they've ever known. So, picture this. Deep, deep down beneath the earth, there's this huge cavern. And this isn't some temporary shelter. For the people inside, this cave is their entire universe. This is where Plato sets the stage. Now, the folks living in this cave aren't free to just wander around. Nope. They're prisoners, and they've been chained up since they were babies. Their legs, their necks, they're all locked in so tight they've been stuck in the exact same spot, facing the same direction for their entire lives. And because they're chained up like this, they can't even turn their heads. They can't look left, they can't look right, and they definitely can't look behind them. Their entire world, their whole field of vision, is just a flat stone wall right in front of them. So, what do they see on this wall all day? Well, behind the prisoners, there's a big fire burning. And between that fire and the prisoners, there's this little wall, kind of like a puppet theater. People are walking back and forth behind it, holding up statues and all sorts of objects. And the fire casts the shadows of those objects onto the wall that the prisoners are forced to stare at. And here's the absolute kicker. For these prisoners, the shadows aren't just, shadows. They are reality. It's all they've ever known. Any sounds they hear, they think the shadows are the ones talking. This flickering, two-dimensional show on the wall is their complete and unquestioned truth. Okay, so that's the setup. But what happens when that entire reality gets completely shattered? The story's about to take a really dramatic turn, because one of these prisoners is suddenly set free. And the journey that follows? Well, it's anything but easy. I mean, just imagine being forced to your feet after a whole lifetime of sitting. It would be agony. The prisoner is turned around, away from the familiar wall, and toward the fire. And that light, which is so much brighter than the dim shadows, it hurts his eyes. He's totally confused. The real objects that he's being shown seem less real to him than the shadows he spent his whole life watching. And if you think that's bad, his ordeal is far from over. He is then literally dragged, kicking and screaming, up this rough, steep path, completely out of the cave and into the world above. And when he gets out, the sunlight is, well, it's completely blinding. At first, he can't see a single thing. It's a painful, disorienting, and honestly terrifying process. Okay, so you've probably guessed that Plato isn't just telling us a spooky story. This whole thing is a giant metaphor. The cave is the world we see with our senses. The prisoners, that's us. All of humanity. The shadows are our everyday perception of what's real. And that escaped prisoner, that's the philosopher, the one seeking real truth. That journey out of the cave is the journey from illusion to true understanding. And that world outside, that's what Plato considered true reality. So, that real world outside the cave, that's not just a happy ending to the story. It is the absolute heart of Plato's entire philosophy. He argued that our physical world, the one we live in, is just a shadow, a cheap copy of a much truer, more perfect reality, the world of forms. So, what exactly is this theory of forms? Well, basically, Plato is saying that for every single thing that exists in our physical world, a chair, a dog, the idea of justice, there is a perfect, eternal, and unchanging blueprint of it in a higher, non-physical realm. These blueprints are what he calls the forms. Everything we see and touch is just an imperfect copy of its perfect form. So you've got these two worlds, right? On one hand, there's our world, the world of appearances. We know it through our senses. It's where you find a specific tree, which is imperfect and will eventually die. But then there's the world of forms. This is the higher reality that holds the perfect, eternal idea of treeness itself. You can't see it or touch it, you can only grasp it with your mind through reason. And to top it all off, Plato says there's one form that rules them all. Just like the sun in the allegory lit up the outside world so the prisoner could finally see things as they really are, Plato believed in a highest form, the form of the good. This is the ultimate source of reality and knowledge, illuminating all the other forms, like beauty, justice, and, even treeness. Now, as mind-bending as this all sounds, it wasn't a slam dunk for everybody. In fact, one of the biggest critics was Plato's very own star student, a guy you may have heard of named Aristotle.
he had some serious problems with his teacher's big idea.
And yeah, Aristotle did not pull his punches. See, he was an empiricist, which is a fancy way of saying he believed that knowledge comes from what you can observe and experience right here in the physical world. For him, this whole idea of another invisible realm of perfect things, it was just an unnecessary and frankly unprovable complication.
Aristotle's main points were pretty straightforward. First, there's zero physical evidence for this world of forms. You can't test it. Second, why invent a whole separate reality to explain this one? It's just overly complicated. And third, and this is a big one, how can a world of perfect, unchanging forms possibly explain all the change and motion we see all around us every single day? For Aristotle, it just didn't add up.
He also came up with this really clever logical puzzle to poke a hole in the theory, called the third man argument. Okay, stick with me here. Plato says that to understand what a group of men have in common, you need a perfect form of man. Fine. But now your group isn't just the men, it's the men plus the form of man. So what do they have in common? Well, according to Plato's logic, you need another form to explain that new group, and then another one for that group. You see where this is going? It leads to an absurd, infinite loop.
So, Plato gives us this incredible, reality-bending idea, and then his best student comes along and tries to tear it down. Where on earth does that leave us? Let's bring this ancient story right into today. Whether you're on board with this whole world of forms thing or not, that's almost beside the point. The real power of the allegory of the cave is that it's a timeless challenge. It's a call to action. It asks us to be critical of what we just accept as true. It pushes us to really question if the shadows we're shown by our culture, by the media, by our own biases, are actually the whole picture. It's a call to turn around, even if it's painful, and seek the light for ourselves.
And that's the question Plato leaves us with, a question that is just as powerful and just as relevant today as it was thousands of years ago in ancient Athens. It forces us to look at our own lives, our own beliefs, and ask a really tough question. What is my cave? And what shadows am I mistaking for the real thing?